please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Trustee Costa?
Present.
Trustee Caprio?
Present.
Trustee Rogers? Present. Trustee Sweet? Present. Trustee Knightsky-Trotty? Present. Trustee Varian?
Present.
Mayor Yukic?
Here. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have a few.
Okay.
I would like to move items I-13 and I-14 of the legislative to our next meeting. And that would be contingent on the agreement with the public improvements being made with the village and the developer.
I will second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Tom, they won't be discussing it tonight. That's what I'm saying, on the 26th. We just got to have this wired up and we'll go to vote tonight. We'll have the action items. Okay? Are there any other amendments? Thank you, okay?
Well, Mr. Mayor, if I can, under new business, there's two items. Well, actually, it might be even under old business. I want to talk about Woodbine Park, as we call it today, and also a consensus from the board on next year's fest.
Okay, that'll be fine.
Let's do it under new business, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So we'll have under new business Woodbine for the park and for the festival. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from July 8th, 2015 village board meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of July 22nd, 2015 village board meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, trustee Suisse. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next is reports and communications from the mayor and other officers. I'll start with mine, then we'll bring it down to the trustees. Jewel had signed, they re-signed their lease for another 5 years because their lease is up this year. So it's a very good thing. They feel very comfortable here. So we've got 5 more years with them. And we continue to appreciate Jewel's presence here in Homer Glen. IDOT announces 159th Street closures in Orland Park. The Illinois Department of Transportation has announced that 159th Street will be fully closed to traffic between 104th Avenue and 108th Avenue in Orland Park. The 159th Street closure will take effect on Wednesday, August 19th, and is expected to end by August 31st. So just so everyone knows that 159th Street is going to be horrible. You're going to have to go to 167th, 151st, or 143rd. What they're doing is they're fixing the railroad crossings there. Woodbine Area Regional Drainage Improvement Project update. We've been updating the public through the website blog on this important project to improve drainage in and around the Woodbine golf property. Tonight, the board will hear presentations from 2 of the engineering companies that came forth to let us know what we can do in a golf course. They will be Christopher Burke Engineering and HR Green Engineering. At the next board meeting, the village will hire one of these 2 firms and begin the process of getting the drainage study complete so that we can begin the construction of drainage improvements on and around Woodbine. I want to thank Trustee Costa, Trustee Varian, Manager Davis, Mike Salamowitz, and Jim Wolkowski, who made the group that went through all the engineering RFPs to get to this point. And anyone who has any questions about this project can contact me. So with that, we'll turn it over to the trustees, and we'll start down by trustee Barron.
I have nothing to report there.
You should be fine. Okay. Trustee Troy.
Yes, from the Parks and Rec Committee, we had our first meeting on July 27th. Our next meeting is August 31st at 6:30. It was a well meeting. It went well. We are reaching out for bids for Stonebridge for the landscaping by the signage and by the flagpole. I was gonna ask a couple questions about the engineering, but since they're here tonight and they're gonna discuss it, that's pretty much my report.
Okay. Thank you, Trustee Drake. Trustee Casa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to report for the Public Safety and Services Committee. We had a meeting first Wednesday of the month. A couple things came up. First, our bike trail, the south extension, going from Martingale down to 159th, should be starting within the next week or so. That project will take approximately 2 months to complete. Also, the village or the township highway department has started a paving program, so various subdivisions will be getting a facelift on certain streets that are needed, that's needed. So be aware of that. And also, the lights at the crossing for the bike path on Parker Road that we purchased have been installed. I know one of our residents has been asking us for a while when they were going to be put in, but those are in. And that is my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Trustee Costa. Trustee Rogers. Trustee Sweet.
Thank you, Mayor. Reporting for the Environment Committee, the stargazing event that took place on July 24th was a huge success with about 300 people attending the 2-hour event. I want to thank again the Kankakee area stargazers and the Southwest Observers and Naperville astronomy groups. Our committee would also like to thank Mr. John Robinson, coordinator, and EMA members who assisted with parking. Thank you to Homer Township for the use of Trantina Farm and to District 92 for controlling the parking lot lighting. The next stargazing event will take place on October 23rd. I happened to attend a Lockport Township meeting last night and thought it was interesting that they are canceling their fall tree planting due to the scarcity of trees at the various nurseries. I know that our village staff member is continuing to mark EAV trees for removal and is currently checking on replacement availability. So that'll be interesting to see. I guess trees are becoming quite scarce for replacement. Reporting for the Homer Harvest Day Committee, we have a great lineup of live entertainment, demonstrators, vendors, and arts and crafts taking place on September 12 and 13 at the Trantina Farm. I will have more details in the schedule of events to report after our next meeting on August 20th. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Trustee Sweet. Trustee Caprio.
Nothing to report at this time, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, sir. Does the treasurer have a report?
No report, Mayor.
Okay. Does the clerk have a report?
I do not, thank you.
Does the public safety and officials have a report?
Number 5. Mayor. I just want to make the board and the residents aware that the Block Party permit application, which was updated through the Public Safety Committee, is now on our website. We generally get about 7 to 10 requests for Block Party permits, which is part of the special event ordinance. This is more of a notification of safety services, and of course these are free permits through the village. Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks, John. Okay. Village manager?
Mayor, thank you. Just a couple of quick items. First of all, the mayor and the village board are very concerned about transparency, and so we're continuing to try to add things to the website. And I think staff has already started uploading committee meeting minutes to the website, which is not something that we've ever had on the website. So I think probably within the next couple of weeks, definitely by the end of the month, all of our committee meetings going back to January 1st will be pretty easy to access on the website in the same manner that those of you may look at village board meeting agendas and minutes. So look for those, and hopefully you'll enjoy reading those if it interests you. I want to thank the Catholic Church. Had a great fest on the weekend. I got an opportunity to go over there with some friends and ate a lot of good baked goods and listened to some great music. So congratulations to them for their Prairie Fest. It was pretty successful. And I know that in the mayor's, first of all, I encourage everybody who hasn't had the opportunity to sign up to automatically receive the mayor's blog. You can do that on our website. There's and certainly we'd be able to help you out if you find it at all challenging. It's pretty simple. And it will come to your email automatically every week. The mayor puts a blog up there, usually on Mondays or Tuesdays, on the rare occasion Wednesdays. And there's a number of he's already done, I think, 11 of them or 12 of them. And next week, one of the items I know that he's going to be updating the community on is ComEd's twice a year tree work that they do, the trimming that they do. And just as kind of advanced information, in September and October, ComEd's going to be working down in the Bruce Road, Chicago Bloomington Trail, Waffer, Martini, 179th area, doing a lot of right-of-way trimming. And the mayor will be putting some maps and things of that nature up on his blog next week to inform the public. So, Mayor, board, that's all.
Thank you. Next is public comment. If you could, please keep it to 3 minutes. We would appreciate it. Thank you. We only have two. Jim Cahill.
Jim Cahill, 16049 Penny Lane, Homer Glen, in the Stonebridge Woods Development. I'm president of the Stonebridge Villas Homeowners Association and want to speak on their behalf tonight about the two items that were delayed for the next meeting. So I'll save my comments for that meeting. Just I would like to say how frustrating this is. I stood before this board several times last winter asking for your help with our slippery streets, the salting of the streets, which there was never a response, except from the mayor, who said if our developer had filed paperwork, agreed to certain things, that he would be able to help us. That took place in February. He filed that. Nothing ever happened. We've been totally ignored, and I hope that isn't the case what's happening tonight.
Thank you, Jim. John Coy.
Yeah. John Coy, 12056 Venetian Way. Got pictures kind of there. First picture is of a young lady that's helped as an age, the girl that's in the wheelchair here. I was on my way to Home Depot the other day, and as I was driving down the street behind Home Depot, she was stuck where the girl's standing there, has her foot where the concrete is cracked and broken. Wheelchair wheel was stuck in that crack. I spent about 5 minutes with the girl trying to get her wheel out of that crack, and we couldn't take her out of the chair, and then I couldn't believe how heavy those chairs are. Well, we finally got her out, and as I'm talking to the girl, I said, let me go get my camera. I want to take a picture of this. I took about 10 steps toward my car, and she goes, oh! I turned around and here, that's when she's in a wheelchair. She went up on the gutter part of the curb, and the final lift, the asphalt is not on that street, which means she almost tipped over right into the street, and some guy come by and he jumped out of his car. He says, you guys all right here? I said, give me a hand, because once those wheelchairs get off a level playing field, all the power shuts off. It's a dangerous place, and that shouldn't be. I truly would like to see maybe something done, or even a little sidewalk down a little bit closer to 143rd Street so that they can cross the street, because in a wheelchair or crutches you can't. You got to cross the grass, and it's not right that you have to go down the street. And I think the top coat of asphalt, that street's been in there for about, what, 8 or 10 years. I think it's finally time that we get the developer to put the top coat of asphalt on. All right? Thank you. And fix that curb.
Okay. Next is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes the following items of business? First one is consider for approval the Chicago Wilderness membership dues for 2015. Second, consider the approval for International Dark Sky Association's request for annual membership dues. Third is considered for approval of the village's May professional consulting services invoice from Williams Architects in the amount of $12,722.18. Fourth and last is consider for approval of the Village of Homer Glen's portion of the Northern Will County Water Agency bill. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Knight-Keechorki?
Yes.
Trustee Barry?
Yes.
Trustee Sweet?
Aye.
Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Caprio?
Aye.
Trustee Costa?
Aye. Motion carries. Legislation and action items. First one is the appointment of the new village attorneys. Is there a motion to approve the mayor's appointment of Mahoney, Silverman, and Cross LLC as the village's attorney and to direct the mayor to sign the engagement letter with said firm detailing the billable rates?
So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Costa?
Aye.
Trustee Caprio?
Aye.
Trustee Knight-Keechorki?
Aye.
Trustee Barry?
Aye.
Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Sweet?
Aye.
Motion carries. Eric, come on up and grab a seat. Eric is part of the Silverman, Mahoney, Silverman, and Cross. It will be our new law firm. And we sat down and are happy to welcome them on board.
Okay, I'm honored to be here.
Okay. Number 2, mosquito control treatment. Is there a motion to authorize a fourth adult mosquito control treatment in the amount of $13,720 for 2015? It is understood that $10,876.44 to pay for this fourth treatment will be charged to the village board's contingency line item number 10928599. The reason we're doing this is the next one doesn't come up till Labor Day. We've had horrible rains. The mosquitoes are terrible. We don't want to take a chance on anyone getting sick, so we decided to throw another one on here. So I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
I second.
Is there any discussion?
I just have a comment, Mayor. Are we putting the mosquito information in an obvious place on the website? Because at the Environment Committee, a couple of people, they have turtles, they have animals that they keep out at night, and I didn't know if we have it in a very obvious spot.
We do, I think she puts it right on the front
Front
when
page,
we do
okay.
it. Yeah, so I think the goal is to, we've already been in conversations with Clark, and his goal is to try to do it as quickly as possible. It's always weather dependent. And Heather Cooknitz usually does it in a way where she has a couple days warning that she can put in.
Okay,
on the
thank you.
website. Yep.
Okay. Any other discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Caprio?
Aye.
Trustee Rogers? Aye. Trustee Sweet?
Aye.
Trustee Barry?
Aye.
Trustee Knight-Keechorki?
Aye.
Trustee Costa?
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, third, PT Farrow invoice for work completed in the Hun Club Meadow subdivision, where the roads were completed. Is there a motion to authorize payment of the final invoice from PT Farrow in the amount of $12,593.42 for the work completed in the Hun Club Meadow subdivision? It is understood that the final payments include the previous retention amount of $9,228.41, as well as $3,365 for additional work completed this year.
I so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Their work is complete on this project, correct?
Yeah, it's, Hun Club is completely done.
Okay.
Any other?
Mayor, just as I know, in answer to that question, the mayor, the completely done part is the road part. There's still some very minor ditch work that needs to be completed, which Director Salamovich is working on getting something before you to do that so that we can be absolutely completely done in a second.
Separate contract.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, this is strictly for the road right now.
This was the most important part. Yeah.
Okay. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Trustee Cabrio?
Aye.
Trustee Costa?
Aye.
Trustee Knightsky-Trichy?
Aye.
Trustee Varian?
Aye.
Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Suisse?
Aye.
Okay, number 4, a 1.2% COLA for the full-time staff members. This would be a cost of living expense increase, so there is a motion to approve fiscal year 2015-2016 1.2% cost of living pay increase for all 12 full-time staff members, retroactive to May 1st, 2015.
So moved.
Now second. Is there any discussion?
Mayor, I would just, if I could. Sure. I would just make a comment that for me personally, this is a very easy vote. That when we talk about government and as taxpayers, I think we're looking for bang for our buck. And I don't know a village of this size with a full-time staff of 12 where taxpayers get the bang for the buck that they get with the staff that we have in this village. So, they do a tremendous job. And again, compared to other villages that I know of and levels of staffing and services provided, I would put Homer Glen up against any of these surrounding towns. So for me, this is a very easy one. I think credit goes to staff for this.
Thank you, Trustee Varian. And I concur with him. We have 12 employees that wear about six different hats, and they get everything done that we look for them to finish up. Some of them stay longer than I wish they would. And I come in and I see them and I tell them to go home. They're a very dedicated group, and we couldn't ask for anyone better. So with that, I need for you to call the roll.
Happy to. Trustee Costa?
Aye.
Trustee Cabrio?
Aye.
Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Suisse?
Aye.
Trustee Varian?
Aye.
Trustee Knightsky-Trichy?
And motion carries. Number 3 would be laptops for elected officials. We are going to try to go paperless because a good example is today's agenda is 294 pages of paper. And that's ridiculous to keep pushing this stuff out. So we decided that going to laptops will give us a very big advantage because you can go back in the laptop and you can find everything for months before. So this way you're not trying to pull more papers with you to a meeting or to ask the staff to take time out of their day to make us copies. So with that being said, is there a motion to approve the purchase of 9, I can't read this one, new Levino laptop computers in the amount not to exceed $8,800. It is understood that this is an unbudgeted expense that will be charged to the village board contingency line item 10.92.80.599.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just clarification for the residents. These laptops are not given to the trustees personally. It's not ours to keep. This is for the village board meetings for all our information, just so everybody understands that.
Also, I'd like to make a comment. It allows us to see that here. Because it's very difficult to see that. And obviously, if there's any research that needs to be done, it's my feeling that allows us at a fingertip, at a glance, we can do that research and quickly get it done. Again, these are not personal use computers. These are strictly for village use, and I see more villages going that route to be more electronically friendly. So,
Thank you.
I have a comment as well.
Sure.
And I think it's a good idea. In some cases, we may want to have some paperwork at a board meeting, but this separates my personal computer, and I'm sure it's with everybody else, is so bogged down with village items. At least now, if this passes, you can have your business and your personal computers totally separate. You don't have to have everything combined.
It's a good thing.
I also want to add that I appreciate Carlos's effort. He did a lot of due diligence in researching what type of computers we needed and made sure that we weren't going above and beyond what we needed, but we had exactly what would work for us. So I appreciate your due diligence on that.
thanks.
Mayor, just maybe a question of the village manager. What's the budget we have for contingency items?
Right.
that this would be coming on.
Right, that's a very good question. Thanks for asking. Every year, the board budgets, I think last year was 90,000, this year was 120,000. Some years, you don't spend any of it, and other years, you spend more. It's set up for this exact purpose, for things that come up during the year that become priorities for the board, that you want to be able to move on. And under normal situations, if you didn't have a contingency, you wouldn't be able to do, because there wouldn't be money budgeted. So you've got about $120,000 in that. These two items tonight, you've approved one. If you approve this one, you'll have taken about $19,000 away from that, so you'll still have over $100,000 in the contingency fund. Yep.
That we don't plan on spending.
Yeah, and the cost savings is going to really, it will definitely catch up. I mean, like I said, our packets were over 200 pages. And not only that, the staff hours that it takes for them to run these and put these together we're going to see that money fairly fast. And I would like to make one other comment. And since so many of these pages were in color, the toner is very expensive as well.
It is.
So it's a win-win.
It is. And Mayor, just one final thing, maybe, everybody can count, so they're like, wait, 9, there's not, 9 of you. We're getting one extra because inevitably something could happen and you're here at a board meeting and you want to have that one available. But it's not just going to sit around waiting for a computer to fail. This one's got a few years on it, so we may be using it on the staff level, and then we'll just have it available on the nights in case something happens with one of the ones that you're using. So.
Do we then need to change the verbiage since it says elected officials?
The agenda.
Oh,
Should be fine.
I don't think that's
Good.
Because the elected officials will be using those, but staff can use them as well.
I would like to add something. I originally was against this. I was originally with paperwork and okay with it, but after speaking out to other villages and finding out what they do, they all said over time the laptops and computers, and not just villages, school boards was another one that I reached out to, and they did say that the computers were the way to go to start saving on trees and paper and whatnot, and staff time.
Yeah, but doctors are doing it, everyone's doing it now. In my business, we do it. Walk up to the car with it. So, did you have a question?
I wanted to know where the 9th one was that he just answered.
Okay. All right, we've had the discussion, so Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Knights-Petrarchy?
Aye.
Trustee Varian?
Aye.
Trustee Sweet?
Aye.
Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Cabrio?
Aye.
Trustee Costa?
Aye. Motion carries. Number 7, committees and their assigned responsibilities.
Number 6.
Number 6. Oh, I should have said that. Ordinance amending building code. Is there a motion to approve ordinance number 15-029, an ordinance amending section 7.8.3, fees of ordinance number 07-049, entitled an ordinance adopting building codes and technical amendments for the village of Homer Glen. It is understood that the amended section will state that at the time of permit, application submittal for residential, single-family residential, multifamily, and new construction projects, a non-refundable building permit application of $850 will be submitted. The remaining fees as required in the adopted schedule of fees, ordinance number 14-071, shall be paid in full prior to permit issuance and are non-refundable. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Made by Carlo. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Beth Rogers. Is there discussion? Madam Clerk, please call it. Oh, Brian, you got something?
Yeah, sorry. Could we maybe village manager could,
sure,
for the residents, explain this in English?
Absolutely. So, someone comes in right now for a building permit to build a new home. And the village's historical practice, going back many years, has been that they pay all of their building permit fees. And this is unique in municipalities. Typically, there's maybe a fee that you pay at the start. It's a smaller fee. And then there's review that happens, and then you come in and things get changed, and ultimately, before you get your building permit, then you pay the rest of the fee. And that's more typical. So, but what we've done for many, many years here is take all the money up front. So what this is doing is it increasing fees or decreasing fees at all? It's just when we're getting the money. And actually, from a developer standpoint, from an individual resident standpoint, it's a very good thing for them, cash flow wise. So.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. All right, could you please call the roll?
Trustee Rogers? Aye. Trustee Suisse?
Aye.
Trustee Costa?
Aye.
Trustee Knightley-Turkey?
Aye.
Trustee Varian?
Aye.
Trustee Caprio?
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 7, committees and their assigned responsibilities. Is there a motion to approve the proposed changes to mayor and village board standard operating procedure, SOP number 001, entitled Village of Homer Glen List of Items, Projects, etc., and standing committees to which consideration of these items shall be sent?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Knightley-Turkey?
Aye.
Trustee Varian?
Aye.
Trustee Suisse?
Aye.
Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Caprio?
Aye.
Trustee Costa?
Aye. Motion carries. Number 8, Villages Accounting Fund Guidelines. Is there a motion to approve the proposed changes to the mayor and village board's special SOP 002 entitled The Village of Homer Glen's Accounting Fund Guidelines? And Cameron, could you explain this before it goes before the
Sure.
very vague?
I'd be happy to. All right. So, well, every year, the village board, the mayor and the village board have a set of SOPs, and typically all these SOPs are reviewed at the end of the year, beginning of the year. These two, the one that you just acted on and this one, were held over for further consideration. But this particular SOP is the SOP that basically is the village's financial rules and regulations per fund. So, as an example, the general fund has all the information about the general fund in terms of what the balances are at the end of the last fiscal year, what the anticipated balances are at the end of this fiscal year, and then it lists what the major sources of revenue are to the general fund and what the typical general expenditures are to the general fund. If there's any limitations, it goes into that. So that is repeated for every single fund that the village has. Every year we go through a process of making adjustments to this SOP because obviously every year the amounts of money that we have in funds changes. So Finance Director Sawyers goes through and he makes all the changes, which you see before you in red, that have new dates and new amounts and things of that nature. In addition, there are oftentimes adjustments to traditional areas of expenditures or limitations if the board decides to make adjustments that way. As an example, in the Park and Recreation Fund, Fund 50, we added end maintenance. It was something that had been left out in the previous writing, and obviously we maintain all the parks, and that money goes to maintenance, so that's in there. An additional change this year also is in the Capital Project Bond Fund. When the village board approved the bonds that were let that helped to fund Fund 72, the board was very specific about what the money was to be spent on. There was a very large discussion about what some elected officials had hoped the money could be spent on, and it was a quite lengthy list actually. But in the end, when the board got to the point of discussing and deciding verbally where that money was going to go, the money was going to pay for expenses related to the Bedford Parkway transmission line acquisition, which is through the water agency. The money was to pay for the village's portion of the 159th Street IDOT improvement project, which at that point we thought would be over $1 million, and actually through discussions with the board has ended up being quite a bit less, which is great. And then it was also clearly meant to pay for all of the stormwater improvements that the board has already done and hopes to continue to do into the future, and there'll be many. And those were the three things that the board agreed the money would be spent on. So there have been some minor revisions in wording to make sure that that's very clear for this board and future boards, that those are the current traditional area of expenditures. So Mayor, that's a highlight. And then obviously the best news of the day is the very back page, actually, and that's the elimination of the tollway fund. We had a tollway fund here that the boards many years ago established to pay for the on-ramp that connected us to the tollway. And over the years, the board did a lot of saving and was very prudent financially, and we paid that off last year, so the fund gets to go away, which is a great story. So, Mayor?
Thank you, Cameron. Number 9, resolution celebrating the 25th anniversary. Oh,
I talked so long, you forgot to vote.
yes, I did. So moved. Second?
I'll second the motion.
Do any of you have any discussion on it? Okay. Pretty much with what Cameron had said, all we're trying to do is make sure that the money that we do have is put in a position to where we all agree that that's how it's supposed to be spent and nothing else other than that. Unless there's emergencies, and then it's up to us to decide whether we alter the fund. So this just protects everyone in the village. Could you please call the roll?
Trustee Costa?
Aye.
Trustee Caprio?
Aye.
Trustee Knightley-Chorkey?
Aye.
Trustee Varian?
Aye.
Trustee Suisse?
Aye.
Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Okay, number 9, resolution celebrating the 25th anniversary of the passage of ADA. Is there a motion to approve resolution number 15-011, the resolution celebrating the 25th anniversary of the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act?
I so move.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Caprio?
Aye.
Trustee Varian?
Aye.
Trustee Knightley-Chorkey?
Aye.
Trustee Suisse?
Aye.
Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Costa?
Aye. Motion carries. Number 10, trustee Suisse appointment to the Park and Rec Committee. Is there a motion to approve the appointment of trustee Sharon Suisse to the Village of Homer Glen's Parks and Recreation Committee? It is understood that this appointment is for a period of 1 year.
I so move. Sorry.
That's good.
Okay, Carlos made the move, and we need a second.
I'll second.
Christine makes a second. Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Knightley-Chorkey?
Aye.
Trustee Varian?
Aye.
Trustee Suisse?
Aye.
Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Caprio?
Aye.
Trustee Costa?
Aye. Motion carries. Number 11, Copenhagen Construction's bid for Phase 3 of the Stormwater Drainage Improvement Program. This is part of what we were just talking about with the money being spent. Is there a motion to accept the proposal to approve and contract with Copenhagen Construction, Gilbert, Illinois, for Phase 3 of the Homer Glen Works Stormwater Drainage Improvement Program in the amount of $292,314?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Mayor, I'd just like to say real quick, so you have the privilege of seeing all his lists, which I think we're going to do a better job putting it on the website so people see. We've actually done a considerable number of improvements. Every little red line that you see here is a stormwater improvement we've done over these past couple of years, and these in the yellow are the next two that they're talking about tonight. So this is actually very exciting because with the approval of these and the work that's going to be done subsequently, we will have finished this whole first list, which at the time we started it a couple years back seemed actually pretty long. There's another long list that comes next, and Michael's going to be talking to you about that at future board meetings so you guys can establish the next list to be accomplished. It's a really great story, making a lot of improvements around the community.
I just have a quick comment, I guess. There was a considerable difference in pricing from Copenhagen Construction versus the other 4 contenders. We used them in the past, and is someone we're comfortable with?
They're actually the contractor that's working in the village right now, so
Oh,
they've done a few projects. They probably have some of their equipment already here, so they can
Okay.
save on mobilization.
Yeah, it's just quite a difference, and that's why I just... So, all right, thank you.
Is there there any other discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Costa?
Aye.
Trustee Caprio?
Aye.
Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Sweet?
Aye.
Trustee Berrien?
Aye.
Trustee Nedski-Chorky?
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 12, release of letter of credit for the First Community Bank of Homer Glen. They have everything done inside their building. Everything's been inspected and approved. So I need a motion to recommend approval of the release of the letter of credit for First Community Bank of Homer Glen in the amount of $5,317.29. It is understood that this is full and complete release of the LOC associated with this project. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll
Trustee
second.
Garrett. Thank you, Trustee Caprio. Is there any discussion?
I just have a comment. On the release of the LOC, we did, it says here, we did wait 2 years, and after 2 years, everything is still fine, so that's why we're releasing it now.
Correct.
So that they know, and we don't do this just immediately.
No.
Okay.
This is after we make sure that nothing broke up, nothing changed. If it is, it has to be repaired before we release it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Sweet?
Aye.
Trustee Berrien?
Aye.
Trustee Nedski-Chorky?
Aye.
Trustee Costa?
Aye.
Trustee Caprio?
Aye.
Okay, 13 and 14 we have put off for right now. It'll come before us at the next meeting on August 26th. We're still in the process of working out some details on that, and we would like to get everything done at the same time. Number 15, motion to not object to a Will County application for rezoning. Is there a motion to not object to a Will County application for a zoning map amendment, rezoning from the R2 residential single-family district to the I1 limited industrial district, and a variance to reduce the required front yard setback from 30 feet to 11.8 feet from an existing building located on the north side of Archer Avenue, approximately 1/4 mile east of I-355, and commonly known as 13706 South Archer Avenue in unincorporated Will County. The subject property is located within the 1.5 mile extraterritorial, territorial planning area of the village of Homer Glen. Harbor Holdings, LLC, petitioner Will County case number 6252-MV. So moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion?
I would just like to ask Director Schwartz, is it my understanding this area, this building, it's just, because he has other buildings there and it's just to make everything?
That is correct. There's two parcels. They're triangular in shape, and the parcel on the south has the existing office building, and that's the site, that's the parcel that's zoned R2 residential.
Okay.
And so the county staff has encouraged him to bring the property into compliance. Obviously, he's operated, there's an office building in a residential zoning district, so in their zoning, under their zoning ordinance, they're looking for compliance. So that means rezoning a portion of the property, so the whole property.
The whole property is the same.
now zoned I industrial.
And
Correct.
for clarification, it's really on the borders of a couple towns.
It is.
Right.
It's
Or
within a
villages.
mile and a half of
Yeah,
us.
exactly.
It's obviously not contiguous to
Right.
us, so it's
Yeah.
not eligible for annexation at this time.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Caprio?
Aye.
Trustee Nedski-Chorky?
Aye.
Trustee Berrien?
Aye.
Trustee Costa?
Aye.
Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Sweet?
Aye.
Thank you. Next would be workshop item. At this time, we will hear a presentation regarding the Woodbine Area Regional Drainage Improvement Project. Representatives from Christopher Burke Engineering will go first, and then representatives from HR Green Engineering will follow. So first up is Christopher Burke.
Thank you. My name's Chris Burke. I'll start out the presentation because I'll give an overview of the company. The guys that are out here with me were too young. They were just in grade school and high school when I started the company. So I'll give it. We appreciate the opportunity to be here. What we hopefully get through is that we do this all the time, stormwater management throughout the area. We have lots of experience in doing similar projects, and that we believe we're extremely well qualified. We start out now. One of the things that there's going to be a lot of pictures about stormwater facilities that we've done, you're going to be easily able to discern those taken by engineers and those taken by professionals. So the engineering are going to be the more in the fall pictures. But just to give you a quick overview, we've got about 240 people throughout Illinois and Indiana. We have offices in New Lenox since 2003, Morris since 2011, Peoria, and Rosemont since about 1986. We also have a larger organization called the Burke Group, which has even more engineers. You can see the locations of our office. We have 25 engineers that all day long, I know this is real exciting, they do drainage studies and water resource related work on projects very similar to yours. No one has a bigger, no one in the, our competitors have a larger water resources staff. We're involved with ordinances, the recently prepared Water Reclamation District ordinance. We did technical guidance documents for them. We've been involved with the Will County ordinance. It says teaching hydraulics. I'm starting 15 years as a faculty member of University of Illinois at Chicago, where I've taught the water resources classes. I teach one in the spring, one in the fall, and I teach a senior design course. I've also taught classes at IIT. These are full semesters. These are not hit and run, as well as when I was finishing my PhD at Purdue. Thomas and other people from the office go across the country teaching the use of the computer programs like the ones that we use for this. We are very up to date on all those different state and federal regulations, because we deal with them every day, as well as identifying funding opportunities and grant. We'll talk a little bit about that. Okay. Also, we believe we're leaders in the field. The professional societies, we spend a lot of time. I'm past president of the Illinois section of the American Society of Civil Engineers. Thomas Burke is a past president. We have two others that are past president. I'm past president of the American Council of Engineering Companies, Illinois. I serve as the chair of the Conservation Foundation. They've been working with the village for off and on over the years. We've had leadership the other professional societies as well. I've already talked about the teaching. Where else do we work? This is a partial listing of about 62 of the municipal clients in Illinois. And if we showed you 62 pictures of all the work that we did, we'd be here all night, and we're not going to do that. That gives you an idea of where we work, where we've done similar type studies. And as the bottom point is the key staff for this project are very local. So I'm going to turn it over to the key staff to kind of go through the residents of the village, and I'll let them start off by the presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Dave Buckley. Jeff Jokalski first, who grew up 1.5 miles from the projects, from the village hall.
Well, thank you. Good evening. Chris mentioned I did grow up in the town before it was incorporated, of course, in the great hills of Chickasaw. So it is kind of fun to come back at this point in my career and hopefully work on a project in the town, an area where I grew up. But I want to talk about our experience that we can bring to this project. As Chris mentioned, no firm does more of these types of studies. We do them day in and day out. Big studies, small studies. In addition to all these local studies, we've done drainage design for many of the major civil engineering projects that have happened in the Chicago area over the last decade. These happen to be a lot of roadway projects that you've seen. I-355 South Extension, the Ilion Expressway, currently shelved, but we've done a lot of the drainage design for that. If anyone has the misfortune of having to drive on the 290 every day, on the Eisenhower, you probably know it's flooded several times over the past couple of years. IDOT contracted with us to do an investigation and a flood study of that highway to figure out what the problem is. Here modernization we're talking about regional detention, some of the largest regional detention basins you're going to find around the airport. We had a hand in all of those. We've done a lot of projects that have won awards, and many for which we've gotten grants. Grants is obviously a major issue. It's become a very specialized process, grant writing, grant application, and we've been fortunate to be pretty successful with helping our clients obtain those grants. Our experience is also very local. We're very familiar with the watershed that we'll be working in, Long Run watershed. We, for the past decade or so, have served as the engineer in Orland Park, and so any number of developments, any number of stormwater projects we've done there have been in the watershed. We've worked for the Will County DOT Probably, if you've been to the Target there on Lamont Road and Archer Avenue, you've seen that project at 135th Street there. That involved a relocation of Long Run, the major creek in the watershed. Involved a lot of analysis, a lot of hydraulic modeling. That was our project. We were also involved with a committee that you may or may not know exists, the Long Run Watershed Planning Committee. It's been around for 4 or 5 years, and we're a planning partner. We're the only engineer on the committee. And over the past 2 years, they've been working to develop and recently published a report, a water quality report on the watershed that they're starting to work on getting the communities to adopt. So we had a very central role in that project as well. In its most basic sense, the project that we're talking about is really for us to tell you how big a hole do we need to put in the ground to be able to solve some of these regional drainage problems. But we understand, we've done enough of these studies to really understand that there's a lot of unique opportunities that the project could present. Certainly flood mitigation, solving flooding problems. But when we do that, we have the opportunity to also improve water quality, to have an aesthetic amenity, recreational opportunities. There's a lot of other kind of ancillary benefits that can come from that project. We spent some time preparing for this presentation tonight, looking at your website. A number of times it talks about the core values of the village, and when you're reading through those, a project like this can really hit a lot of those different core values. So I kind of want to go through a number of projects, types of projects, give you an idea of the sort of opportunity that this project could have. So these will be a number of really pictures of different types of basins that you can think about as this project develops. What sort of feature do we want to build? The picture on the left would be a typical, we call it a dry bottom facility in a residential area, not permanently holding water. The one on the right is more of a water feature. We call this a regional reservoir. This is on a scale of, similar to what we're talking about doing here, but on a larger scale. So a couple 100 acres, very large reservoirs that provide storage for a number of residential subdivisions. This one happens to be in Bolingbrook. We've done them in park facilities. Fortunately, you don't have this issue here where you're tight on space. We've got this nice big open space to work with. But a lot of the projects that we deal with, they're in older developed communities, open spaces at a premium. And when we talk about trying to fix flood problems, we're often looking to put in stormwater storage into existing park facilities. And we've been successful with that. These are two award-winning projects we've done. The one on top is in Downers Grove. The one on the bottom is Potawatomi Park in Tinley Park. And we're able to have facilities that provide both stormwater storage and athletic fields, different types of facilities. Natural ice basins, we've done a number of these, both in design as well as our environmental staff does maintenance and monitoring on these so that when they're initially built, they grow to what they should be, the type of wetland community that they should be. So these are just a number of pictures of different types of natural ice basin so that you get an idea of what this regional facility we're talking about could look like. Here are some others. They begin to kind of shift from strictly naturalized to more of a passive recreation, maybe a fishing type facility. So we've done all these different types of projects, so we know what it takes to incorporate all those different elements. Golf courses. Obviously, this is not a golf course project, but no one's done more golf courses than we have. We were just kicking around a list of what are the major golf courses we've done, and we came up with 11, where these were full major reconstructions of the course with drainage problems, and we were responsible for handling the drainage. I'm not a golfer, but if you are, you probably recognize a lot of the names on the list, some of the major courses in the area. While we recognize this is not a golf course project, really why we thought this was important to put up here is because, well, for one, golf course ponds, they tend to be in low areas and they tend to serve as regional facilities, not much different from what we're talking about here. And also, most importantly, the number one most important thing about a golf course pond is it has to be aesthetically really nice. So we had the experience of working with those professionals who design landscape architects and golf course architects to be able to really make a nice looking pond. I'm going to move on to just a couple of more concrete examples of specific projects that we've worked on that are similar. Here's a project that I worked on in Lombard, where it was an existing pond that provided stormwater storage. The village wanted to expand it, the park district didn't, so they came up with a compromise of basically lowering the pond to get more storage. And restoring it to the existing facility had kind of a naturalized look to it. There's a nice walking path around it. It's a popular fishing spot. So the picture on the left is one of those engineer-taken photos, but it kind of shows the old and the new merging together, so you really can't tell any change in the pond. I mentioned Bolingbrook earlier. This in the circle there is about an 80-acre site. It's just the pond, it's 4 feet deep, so it provides a ton of flood storage for all the surrounding residential areas. It was a very successful project. This here's a project we're really proud of. It was Northside Park in Wheaton, and it's an example of the type of thing where you can incorporate a stormwater project, a flood control project, into a really impressive park setting. That back and forth between the pond and the park was a process that continued throughout the entire design. And we were involved in this from the beginning, from design, conception through design through construction. And you can see how the trail system kind of intersects with the pond. It's really any sort of, like I said, we're going to tell you how big the hole needs to be, but we understand how to take these projects through to completion to be able to incorporate all these different elements. Here's an example in Michigan City, really similar type of project where it's a regional flood control facility. It was turned into, this one really had an environmental, wildlife habitat aspect to it. And it was really another successful project that created about 15 acres of new wetlands. So the next step, I think, for our presentation tonight is to focus a little bit more on the site itself. So to do that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dave Buckley.
Hi. So I don't want to bore everybody with a bunch of engineering jargon, but this is an engineering study, so we'd like to point out some of the things that we would have to address during the project process. One of the things that we start to do when we look at these projects is we do data acquisition, and so we'll collect all the data, we'll sit down with village staff, collect everything available within the surrounding subdivisions, and try to identify any of the problems that we need to address. Part of that process might include a flood questionnaire or just a questionnaire to get an idea as to what kind of flooding residents may or may not be experiencing, and kind of identify those flood problem areas. And then from that, we take that information and we put it into a computer modeling program. The modeling program is twofold, where we have the ability to simulate rainfall depths, and then we take the runoff from those rainfall storm events and route that through storm sewers, and we can identify bottlenecks in different areas of concern through those flood problem areas. And from there, we continue along with our model and develop an improvement plan. And along that process, we work with village staff to throw out ideas, get other ideas from staff and figure out what the best way is to attack our solution here. And from that, we would present back to the board here our final presentation with the cost estimates and so forth. When we kind of sat down and looked at the actual property that we're talking about here at Woodbine, one of the sites that we previously designed came to mind, where this site here incorporated a ton of amenities, a lot of different things. But I mean, we keep in mind too that as we kind of stack up the amenities with things, that drives up the cost as well. So moving through a process like this, there would be a lot of give and take between us and staff to figure out what exactly everyone's looking for and how we can implement the storage on the property. And so what we've done here is kind of shown the property as a placeholder within one of our original designs. And obviously, we're looking to reduce flooding around the different subdivisions around the area. And we understand too that the village was recently incorporated and that there may be some problems that were inherited in previous designs. And so we would try to address that. And we're also not in the business of sort of sending the problem downstream. So we ensure the fact that we're not going to send water downstream to downstream property owners, cause problems throughout everyone else. And one of the major components of this property could be, improving water quality. And addressing any water quality concerns in the spirit of the long-run watershed plan. And as we're moving along, we're developing this master plan, and at this point, we don't really know what the future plans are for the total site, but any future development there would be included within accordance with the village's ordinance to provide detention for that future development. So this is the same slide, just moving in a little bit, and like we said, this is a really unique opportunity to potentially provide this open space feel, this community, this sense of identity, right in the village, the new Villages Hall's backyard. We give the community an identity, an active recreation opportunity, passive recreation, create wildlife habitat, and obviously educational opportunities and outreach opportunities to sort of promote that long-run watershed plan. So with that, we've seen a lot of slides about all the work that we've done. I think that our experience sort of speaks for itself. And the key staff that we have, I and my family and we live in Homer Glen myself. And at the end of the day, we're committed to doing a project like this, and I personally want to work on a project like this. We're very committed to meeting a schedule, and we've never let anybody down, and I'd encourage you guys to check with our references.
Thank you. Any questions from the group?
Go ahead, Trustee Guthrie. I have a few questions for you. I know Trustee Berry and I were fortunate enough to sit on the subcommittee, the task force, to read through all the RFPs and come down to having you folks and others coming tonight. So these questions are probably going to be what I asked a couple weeks ago. You mentioned on your last slide that your 12-week schedule. I just want to point out again, to the rest of the board members too, which they're aware of, and the residents, that your engineering study and recommendations for the flooding problem is so important to our community, because what you are going to give us is a complete survey of the property, number one, and that will enable us to move forward with the park plan. So if what the work that you're recommending is going to happen on the northeast side or the northwest side of the park, we need to know that as quick as possible, or the anticipated work, let's say, so we can move forward with getting a firm on board to start engineering, getting a park development plan going for the parcel. So with that being said, the 12 weeks is very important to us, because if for some reason that goes into 16, 18, 20 weeks, that's going to slow us up on our park planning. We want to do these projects. There's going to be some meshing with your data, being able to give it to our engineering firm to start working on the park, and our park committee and the board. So are you confident that the 12 weeks is doable to get us the information that we need?
We stand by the 12 weeks. We're fully committed to honoring the 12 weeks.
Okay, my next question is that through your RFP and the information that we had, you are going to be surveying the property. Now, keep in mind that it's roughly 100-acre parcel, and it is park. And I personally am anticipating getting that open to the public right away, just at least for passive recreation, to walk, be out there, sit with their families, enjoy the acreage that we have. Do you see any conflict if your crew is out there surveying or looking at the property, if there's a few residents on the property? Do you see any conflict?
Not at all.
Okay, and of course with the understanding that if you find something in the near future that's going to take some kind of exploratory excavation or digging, we may have to limit the use for a short time for safety of the residents.
Yeah, that would be understood.
Okay. And last thing is the cost that you gave us for the work you're going to do, and of course it's all in your RFP, and what you gave us what it includes. That's also going to give us recommendations and some budgeted numbers based on the recommendations and design of the solution to our problem. So
yes.
It won't be an actual cost or an estimate from other contractors. We can give us some basic ideas of what it could cost.
Yes, yeah. Any solution, conceptual plan that we come up with would be accompanied with the cost estimate.
And your cost is a not to exceed number, correct?
That is correct.
So if you do it more cost effective and you're able to get through a little quicker, it could be some
Cheaper.
cost saving.
That's right.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I have 2 questions too, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Just to add on to the question that trustee Costa asked. 12 weeks is to find out a solution. Not to remedy it, but to find a solution.
That is correct. It would be to produce a conceptual plan.
A conceptual plan. And then the potential issues that, from projects you've done, and with this particular project, with the 3 surrounding communities, Woodbine, West, East, and Saddlebrook, what, I know you can't guess the future, but what, have you run into issues where you see potential issues to those 3 surrounding communities while you're engineering your study and while we go through that construction phase of trying to figure out what we can get done? I want the least impact to those 3 communities that we could possibly obtain, obviously.
Right.
We're not fortune tellers, I get it.
Right. I mean, this is a high-level conceptual design, so, you know, there really is no construction or impact to any of the residents. I guess with respect to time frame, one of the things that we've seen happen before is if we outreach to residents and try and identify some of these flood problem areas, the time it takes to get the questionnaires back and that information and corroborate all that information together, that could take some time. But in that same respect, you know, there's other aspects of the project that we're going to continue to keep moving forward on while that's happening.
Anyone else? I was happy to see that you went boots on the ground for doing the topo, because it's just to make sure that we've got everything right as we're supposed to.
I'm sorry. I didn't
And it's reading through everything that you've written and knowing the work that you've done. It's looking good for the village, so we appreciate it very much.
Just to touch on the topic you just brought up, something we talked about with the subcommittee, the boots on the ground topographic survey. Can you just maybe explain that a little bit of what that would entail as a process?
Sure. It's essentially 2 guys, 2-man crew, moving and taking a shot, picking up a shot every 50 feet. And doing a 50-foot grid over an entire area.
Okay.
In some portions, we may use like an ATV and drive portions of the area, some of the areas that are wide open. In some of the areas where it's real dense and there aren't clear lines of sight, that's where, you know, the 2-man crew would go into those areas and try and pick up all the specific structures within backyards, fence lines, pools, you know, within that 100-foot boundary along the site property.
I just want to be clear that, again, something we talked about in the subcommittee, your price structure includes, at a minimum, 3 meetings with staff, the residential questionnaire that you touched on, a presentation to the board with the final findings, and boots on the ground, which is something, again, we discussed as part of the subcommittee. That is all included in your price structure.
That's correct.
Okay. One last question I have is when we talk about the price structure, the topographic survey, and again, we touched on this. This is more just to put it, you know, on the record for residents and my fellow board and mayor. The survey cost, as you guys itemized it out, is higher than some others, and higher than the other firm that we'll be interviewing or having a workshop with this evening. Yet your total is less. Can you explain why that is? I guess I won't put words in your mouth. Why is that number so much higher when you itemize it out versus the total still being less?
Well, I can't speak for the other firms, but, you know, my personal experience, surveying is labor intensive. There's a lot of hours involved. That's just how much it costs. You know, if you want a good product, boots on the ground, you know, we stand by that number. And I know in the subcommittee meeting we mentioned that we have a couple of other firms within the Burke group, and you know, to be frank, we sort of shopped it around and tried to get the best price. And, you know, that's what we feel to provide that level of detail for the survey. We understand that this survey is going to be used moving forward, like you mentioned, for the planning process of the rest of the park. So something that detailed, we believe that's how much it costs.
And I'm not sure, I mean, I know we had graphics up there tonight, sort of zoomed in, but we're still talking about a drainage basin, some sort of water basin in the northeast corner of the property, right, of Woodbine as it is now as a golf course. That is the most, obviously that's all going to be part of the study that you conduct should you be chosen. But that is, looking at the data you've seen, that's the most likely scenario.
Yeah, from the 40,000 foot level, you know, obviously once we get into details of the study, you know, the size and the shape and depth, those things are all dictated by how much water we're bringing there, what we want to see with the park, how many amenities we want to incorporate. You know, it could be just as simple as a manicured edged pond. You know, whether it goes in the east side or the west side, the fact remains the low grounds towards the north end of the property, and that's where we've kind of targeted in for now. But yes, it is a reservoir designed to provide flood storage.
That's all I had.
Okay. Are there any more questions? Okay, thank you very much. And we have one more to do and we'll get back.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor, you might, if you want to, maybe take a couple minutes break because it's going to take a little bit of time.
Okay. All right, we'll take a 5-minute break for right now, and we'll call it back in. We're back in session. Okay, at this time, we are going to have HR Green have their presentation on what they plan on doing with Woodbine, and the floor is yours.
Good evening. Thank you very much for the opportunity to make a presentation on the Woodbine Area Regional Drainage Improvement Project. We are very excited about this project, and we are very privileged that you gave us the opportunity to make the presentation. We have put together a team of engineers which will deliver you the project on time and within budget. I am Akram Chaudhary. I will be the principal in charge of the project. Adi Dean, who heads our water resources business line, he will do the quality control and quality assurance for this project. Jared Oliver will be the project manager. With me, I have Logan. He will be the project manager, project engineer for this project. He will be doing the lion's share of this project. He has done many projects in the village, at least 6 of the drainage projects. For land surveying, I have Milan and Mike Fisher. They are from our New Lenox office. We also have Steve Zimmerman of Applied Ecological Services. He had a previous commitment. He was with us last Wednesday when we made the presentation in front of the committee, but today he had another engagement, so he couldn't come with me, but he's on our team. He's the one who did the Long Run Creek drainage study. He was the author of that, and this Woodbine drainage project falls within the Long Run Creek, which will, the leader will pick up. We believe that he'll be helpful in, we'll tap into his resources and knowledge for that Long Run Creek study, and it'll be helpful for the village and for us. And we, throughout the this project, we're going to focus on 3 key points: vision, relationships, and delivery. By vision, I mean that we will create a design which matches your vision for the regional drainage basin and also the development of the park property. We will, what we will do is once this project is complete, it will substantially reduce flooding in the Woodbine subdivision and the other neighboring subdivisions in the area. It will also promote future park development, and consequently it will improve quality of life. Number two, we are going to concentrate is on relationships. We will manage relationships between the village, the residents, and the regulatory agencies. We will be the extension of the village staff. We will get these regulatory agencies informed of the project and get them involved in the process early on, which will help us expedite our project and get the approvals in a timely manner. We will also involve the residents so they feel that they are part of the project and get their input and implement some of the suggestions in this project. And the last one is the delivery. We have put together a team of engineers that will deliver you the project in a timely manner and within budget. And with that, we have done at least 6 drainage projects within the village, and we have met every single deadline. We haven't missed any deadline so far, and we can assure you that we will deliver this project also in a timely manner. With that, I don't want to take too much of your time. I'll ask Logan to come and make the presentation. Thank you.
All right, good evening. All right, thank you for the opportunity to come down here this evening. I know, we want to keep this moving, so I'll just get right into our presentation now. First, I really want to introduce you to HR Green. HR Green is a company that's been around for over 100 years. This is actually our 102nd anniversary this year. The project team that we put together for this has over 100 years of combined experience. Between everyone on our team, I think the total was over 140 to be exact. We have over 10 years experience working with the village and the Township Highway Department already. And this list on here, these are all the drainage specific projects that we've done for the village and the road district. Now I want to bring your attention really fast to 2 of these projects in particular. The first one is the 151st and Parker intersection. This really wasn't what you would consider a drainage project. It was a roadway project. You wanted to improve traffic flow. However, before we did this project, the intersection flooded frequently. I believe it was probably twice a year from what I hear. The Pebble Creek detention basin, which is immediately adjacent to that, was also showing signs of overtopping, and I would assume you were probably getting residential complaints from how frequently that pond was filling up. So with this being an intersection, we need to make sure that it's not going to flood and inhibit traffic flow. So digging into this a little bit more, that intersection has about 230 acres of farm field that drains to it that was going underneath the intersection through one single culvert and then filling up that detention pond. That pond most likely was not designed to take that flow and causing flooding for your residents. Now this is important because with those 2 projects being interlinked, we were actually able to use federal funding for the intersection, but also incorporate improvements to the detention pond, all under one project. By doing this, we're able to save the village approximately $200,000 that wouldn't, it wouldn't have been covered if you did the 2 projects separately. So by installing the storm sewer that we did and the culverts that we did, and finding funding the way that we did on this project, we're actually able to save you approximately $200,000. Another project that's important and relevant to the current project we are discussing today is the Hadley Woods subdivision. This is a detention pond that is actually a regulatory wetland. This project was recently let for improvements, but this is relevant to our project today because with it being a wetland, we had to get permitting through the Army Corps of Engineers. We worked with Mike Mahoney out of the Chicago office to get a regional permit, and everything's set right now. It has been let, and it's going to be constructed this fall. So, with our history of working with the village and the road district, I just want to show this quick exhibit. It's a map of Homer Glen. All these green dots on here represent all the drainage-specific projects that we've already completed. This yellow star up here represents the Woodbine Golf Course, which we would really love to add to our list of completed projects for you. And something very important to note on here are these black squiggly lines. These are actually the watershed divides that flow through the village. You've got Spring Creek on the south here. These black lines delineate all the area in the village that drains into Spring Creek. This divide right here shows everything that drains into Long Run Creek. And as Akram had mentioned, our project, the Woodbine Golf Course, is located within the Long Run Creek watershed. And with the recent Long Run Creek watershed-based plan, it was identified as a project that could be done to improve water quality. Keeping that in mind, that will open us up to funding in the future, and I will discuss that in more detail in a little bit. So, when I give a presentation, I like to really just discuss, number one, what the issue is, then go into what our potential solutions are, and then provide you with some proof that we can actually deliver on what we're saying we're going to do. So, sorry, with the projector it doesn't show up that well, but this is the Woodbine Golf Course right here. The northeast corner of the project, right up here, has a freshwater wetland on it. This is under the jurisdiction of the Army Corps of Engineers and United States Fish and Wildlife. That's why I mentioned that we've previously been working within the village to get permits for wetlands. Now, this next exhibit, we did a little bit of background research. This is data that I've used on all 6 projects that I've done personally for the village. What this is right here are the elevations of the area shown with color. The orange down here and the yellow represent all your hills, your points of high elevation. And then all the blue and purple, that represents where you have streams and low-lying areas. Now, just by a quick inspection out here, you can see that the Woodbine Golf Course drains towards the northeast corner, which is where we're proposing potentially installing a regional detention basin. But then you can also see right adjacent to the golf course, in the Woodbine subdivision, you got this big blue area right along, I believe that's Eagle Ridge Drive. Just by looking at this really quickly, I would assume that they are your residents who are experiencing flooding. Now, this is free data that I've used on past projects, and it's worked out well in the past. By manipulating this a little bit more, we can actually develop a contour map for the area. And this just validates what we were seeing with the colors. This actually shows, again, it's difficult to see on the projector, but I can go through here and actually delineate where the divides are that are draining into your Pebble Creek subdivision, Woodbine, all the surrounding areas there. And we can determine what the low-lying areas are, and then we'll back up any flooding complaints that you're receiving. Now, when you're dealing with drainage, there's really 3 things you can do to solve your issues. The first is to convey it. You can install larger storm sewers, you can open up your ditches and just make them bigger. Get the water out of there as fast as possible. But the issue with this is that if you're draining out that golf course and the Woodbine subdivision more quickly, you're potentially going to flood the people downstream and downstream of them. So that's not always the only answer. The second thing you can do is detain the water. This is where you build a pond or take a low-lying area and essentially just store your storm water there and release it more slowly so that the downstream conveyance system, whether it be pipes or ditches, can get it to a stream where it's not going to affect any of your residents. But lastly, you can manage it. You can take this water that would essentially be a nuisance to many people, and you can use it for irrigation. You can use it for a pond. You can make it an amenity to your residents. So HR Green, we like to do a mix of all 3 of these things. It tends to be the best solution for a drainage problem. Now, as I mentioned, I've personally done 6 projects for you. And the software that I've used on all of these is called XP Swim. Now, in my opinion, this is the single best software to use for a project of this nature. The reason for that is that this computer program actually allows me to take the area draining to our site, rain on it virtually, and then it'll tell me how much flow is coming into our site, whether it be for the 100-year storm or an everyday small rainfall event. Then I gotta take that and figure out, all right, is the downstream system big enough to handle it? So I'm working with storm sewers and open channels to convey the water out of there. If it's not, I might need to model in some detention, which you can design ponds and control structures, and this software is just very cohesive. Everything that I need to do for this project is in one single program. There's very minimal risk for human error. Now, alternatively, this project could be done using separate computer programs. You could do one program, which will model the rainfall on the watershed, and that'll give you the amount of flow that you're going to be working with. Then you can model your detention pond with a different program. So you have to take your flows from one, put it into another program, and then from there, you might have to move to a different program, which will model storm sewers. Sometimes drainage software will only do a pipe. It won't do a channel. So there's more chance where you're moving data from one program to the other. It opens you up to error. With XP Swim, everything is inside the same program. It's just very cohesive. So, keeping that in mind, and all the background research we've already done, I went through those contours that I generated from that colorful exhibit and did a really quick delineation of the watershed divides for our project. These gray lines on here represent kind of the ridges where flows going away from them. These gray arrows on here show, according to the contours, where flow paths are. And then, as I mentioned before, right along this Eagle Ridge Drive is where, based on the data we have, you're experiencing some flooding. Now, a potential solution to this is to install a regional detention basin. And as I mentioned before, since the northeast corner of the golf course is already a low-lying area, this is an ideal place to do that. So this is kind of, not to scale. This is just to represent where it may be, but this is a potential solution to the problem. Now, doing a project like this, you start out with survey. And I cannot stress enough that the method of survey that you use matters. Think about this. If you are doing the entire golf course, it's a large area. If you're surveying for elevation and you're off by 1 inch, just one single inch, every inch that you're off per acre will add up to 134 cubic yards of material. Now, it's my understanding that this survey that we do for this project will be used for future improvements to the park. Now, if you're going to keep this data and use it for construction, that single inch can cost you a lot of money when it comes to doing further park improvements. So with that being in mind, there's two methods to do an elevation survey. The first one is by airplane. You fly over it, and the airplane actually has it's like a light emitting radar. It bounces down onto the ground and picks up the signal that bounces back. It's called LiDAR. Generally, the accuracy on this is down to 6 inches. So that could be your ground minus 6 inches or your ground plus 6 inches. Another issue with this kind of survey is that if you have trees on the golf course, which there are trees out there, it can't see underneath them. What it needs to do when you process all the data is you essentially guess, based on the ground around there, what the elevation is underneath your tree cover or whatever obstruction there is. Additionally, if you're doing an aerial survey, you're not picking up your utilities. You still need to send somebody out on the site to survey the entire irrigation system and any structures that are out there. Now, what we are proposing to do on this project is a traditional boots on the ground survey, where surveyors will go out on the site and shoot the entire thing. Now, this method of survey is accurate down to 1/100th of an inch, which is, you can barely see that with your naked eye. Now, our scope reflects everything that was requested in the RFP. So this would be a deliverable of a 1-foot contour over the entire project site, as well as all the adjacent survey that's required to complete the project. Now, this information that's gathered will be yours to keep. We will, in the end, give you a deliverable that is an AutoCAD file that can be used for any future improvements that you plan on doing. A future park that you're considering doing, this data will be accurate enough for your construction. This is all that you will need ever, basically, for the park. It'll be ready to build, and you can use it, and it's yours to keep. Another thing that we're proposing to do for this project is really, focus on public involvement. This adds a lot of value to the project, and we feel is definitely worth spending the time on. First of all, we propose doing a residential survey. This gives all your residents a chance to really interface with you and let you know that they're experiencing flooding during this storm frequency, whether or not it happens yearly or it happened in 2008 and we would like this addressed. Or if it's happening every day, it gives them a chance to really voice their opinion. And it also allows me to know whether or not what I'm seeing in my model is accurate. It really helps us with just saying, residents are seeing flooding, my model says it's flooding, everything's making sense here. Secondly, we propose doing a public meeting. This allows your residents to actually come out. We'll have some exhibits ready. They can point at their house and say, I've seen flooding at this intersection. It just gives everyone a chance to really get involved. And if they have ideas for ways to solve the drainage issues, we can hear them out and potentially incorporate them into our design. Lastly, we propose doing a council meeting. Now what this does is allow you to all be educated on the project and up to date. Anytime you have a constituent ask you a question, you're all going to be on the same page. They're not going to say, oh, well, he said this, but she said that. Everyone will know what's going on, and it'll just make everybody up to date on the project. Now lastly, I want to discuss funding really quick. Now I know that this project has a very tight, aggressive schedule, but funding can be very important on a project like this. Now in the past, for the Village of Homer Glen, we've already helped you secure $2 million for our various projects. These include the intersection of 151st and Parker, the community bike path that's currently in design, right? Design? It's been like. The project team that we put together of HR Green and Applied Ecological Services, we have a history of gathering funding together. We're currently about to begin construction on a project that, as a team, we secured $1.1 million for the project through an Illinois EPA 319 grant. We've experienced working with other forms of funding, whether it be through federal, state funds, or even county in some instances. And Applied Ecological Services, as Akram mentioned, our team member, Steve Zimmerman, was one of the lead authors on the Long Run Creek watershed. Now, being part of a watershed-based plan is very, very important to getting funding through the EPA. So basically, we know what it's going to take to get this project funded. Now I want to give some proof to show that we can actually deliver on what we're saying we're going to do here. I have 3 case studies for you. The first one was at the Village of Hinsdale. Now this was a project that was originally studied, and the original estimate for it was $24 million. Now this did not just include drainage. This was roadway, sanitary sewer, water main, basically every bit of infrastructure in this neighborhood. The village thought that was a little steep. So they did another study to see if they incorporated green infrastructure, which are rain gardens and bioswales, what the price would be. That study came out to be $15 million. That's approximately $10 million of savings simply by incorporating best management practices, or BMPs. The reason this works is because by installing rain gardens, which are these things along the side of the road, you're able to reduce your peak runoff from a storm. Because you're storing water, they're kind of like mini detention basins essentially, but you're also infiltrating water back into the ground. You're not just taking water from your roads and putting it straight into a storm sewer. By attenuating that flow, by storing it and infiltrating it, we're actually able to reduce the peak runoff by 60% during a 50-year storm. And a 50-year storm is a very large, intense storm. Now this reduction in your peak runoff is what causes flooding. That most intense part of your storm is what's going to cause residents to be calling in saying that their roadways are flooded out or their basements are filling up with water. So this is very, very valuable. It can save you money and it can reduce your peak runoff. Another project I want to bring up really fast was in the city of Wooddale. These are 2 detention ponds that were not functioning properly. In this photo you can see it's full of water. They were not designed to store water in them. And this was about 7 days after it had rained, so that's how poorly these were functioning. The village, or the city had a set amount of money for this, and we were actually able to get them more money by determining that these detention ponds drained into Salt Creek. The IEPA has identified Salt Creek as an impaired waterway on what's called their 303D list. Based on that, we looked around for more funding and found that DuPage County had a grant that if you improve water quality to an impaired waterway, you can get money. Simply by doing that and filling out a short application, we were able to get 23% of the project paid for by the county, where the city would have had to do this entirely on their own had we not incorporated water quality benefits into this project. Lastly, this is a project in the village of Carpentersville. It was a stream restoration project. You can see in this picture, the stream banks were extremely eroded, and they were actually threatening some homes. You can see a house right in the background there. It was an unstudied floodplain, and the stream had been very channelized. We pretty much threw every single type of best management practice at this project. We were installing pools and riffles, wetland enhancements, rain gardens, native plantings, pretty much everything. And something really important to bring up on this is that a large portion of this project, approximately half the length of the stream, flows through a city park that is under construction. Now, keeping that in mind, we wanted to incorporate our design into their park design. We didn't want it to seem like, oh, they worked on their own and the village worked on their own. So what we did, we actually took our rain gardens and used them as kind of like water hazards, sand traps for their frisbee golf course. We meandered all of our native plantings around their walking paths and basically created butterfly gardens and things that are really aesthetically pleasing to the residents. Now, another important thing to mention on here is that we teamed with Applied Ecological Services on this, and this is actually the project that we were able to get $1.1 million in funding from the IEPA simply because we were improving water quality. And at the same time, we were reducing flooding. Now, as we mentioned, Steve Zimmerman from AES was not able to be here today, so I'm going to cover his slides really quick for him. Now, as I mentioned, he was one of the main authors of the watershed-based plan for Long Run Creek. Now, a big goal of a watershed-based plan is to really create green corridors. Green corridors are places along primarily streams where you're allowing natural areas to remain natural and open. It allows wildlife to have a path to navigate through urban areas, and it also improves just the environment as a whole, primarily water quality. Now, a very important thing to mention about this watershed-based plan is that our site was mentioned specifically as a location that should be improved upon. Right here, both these maps on both sides, this and this cover the exact same area. This number 10 here, this little striped area, that's the Woodbine golf course. And the reason it's identified here is that it was specifically called out saying that this is a location that can be used to improve water quality, and it's a place that can be used to enhance wetlands. Now, the reason it was called out for wetlands is that on this, the same area here on the right, that big yellow dot there, that represents hydric soils which are present in the area. Now, hydric soils mean that they were, at one time before humans interfered, most likely wetlands. They're soils that if you basically left them alone, you would start getting cattails growing. However, if we do improve this with a wetland-based design, we'd be doing a lot more pretty plants than just cattails out there. Now, with this being listed in a watershed-based plan, the EPA has basically said, since they fund watershed-based plans, that if your project is not listed in one of these plans, we're not going to fund it. Since Applied Ecological Services wrote this plan, and this project's specifically called out in there, if we take this project and have it shovel-ready, you have a very good chance of actually getting a large portion of it paid for by the Illinois EPA. Now, with the tight schedule, I understand that we want this to be delivered by the end of November, the original report. That might be kind of quick to do any funding for it, but if you can go to the state and say that we have plans ready to go, we own the property, and we are ready to build this, that really, really increases your probability of getting funding for it. Now, these are just a couple quick examples of projects that Applied Ecological Services has completed. This is a naturalized detention basin. So a basin, picture this on the northeast corner of the golf course. Doesn't look weedy, nice open and clean area. A lot of these wildflowers around here have drawn butterflies and birds. And the way that they set up the plantings in here are that everything around the sides, they're essentially wetland plants. And then you move a little bit further up and they'll do what are called mesic prairie plants. They're plants that can be wet for short periods of time. And then around that, they can plant native prairies. But in addition to that, since this area has hydric soils, and we have an expert with wetlands in our team, we have the potential to do wetland mitigation planning. What this is that, say, the village does a project that impacts a wetland. Currently, you may need to pay for wetland credits. If the village does this and has your own wetland bank, for future projects that you do where you impact a wetland, you can already have the bank set up where you do not have to pay for wetland credits. If you have a surplus, you can actually sell acres or parcels of your wetland bank off for a profit. So with all that being said, I'm going to give it over to Akram, and he can give us our closing remarks on this. But thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much again, and thank you for the opportunity to make the presentation. Like I said before, we have put together a team of engineers that will deliver the project in a timely manner. I know it's a very tight schedule, but I know we can meet your schedule. I've been working with the village and Homer Township Highway Department since 2003. We have done many projects. For the village, we did the non-LOC subdivision punch list, and then we completed some of those subdivisions. We've done many drainage projects. We've done 151st and Parker. We finished this bike path design, and now it will be under construction soon. And whatever deadlines the village imposed on us, we've always met your deadline. We are extension of your staff. And I work well with Mike Salamovich, Mike Schwartz, and his staff. If anytime they need any help, I make it a priority and I make sure it gets done and we make it happen. And once again, I ask you to give me the opportunity to do this Woodbine drainage basin project so we can deliver this project to you on time and within budget. With that, I thank you very much, and we are open for any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Okay, yes, I'm going to ask you a few questions very similar to what I asked our other firms and what we asked in our meeting and our review prior to this. You did mention your timing, your schedule, I believe you have on there is 15 weeks, or were you able to squeeze that down to 12?
We did bring it down a bit since last week's meeting. Our final board approval, what we're aiming for, is November 25th. So we did move it up. I believe it was 2 weeks.
Okay, you can meet that schedule?
We can meet your schedule. It's a tight schedule, but we can meet it. Like I said, we got boots on the ground survey, so we don't have to wait for aerial because sometimes that can delay your project. And we can hit the ground running, and with my records speak for my performance with the village. We have met all your deadlines, and I am confident that we'll meet that one too.
Okay. The reason why we're concerned about it is that we are in the beginning process of planning a park, and the survey and the drawings that you're going to make are going to be key to our park planning, the initial park planning. So any delay on your part is going to delay another committee and another engineering firm of moving forward and getting ready to do some work on our park. So that's critical that we need that time schedule. Okay.
We fully understand that, and that's why I said that would be the first step to get you the survey.
I would like to add to that actually. Some of those exhibits that I showed, the colorful one and the contour exhibit, since I already have that data and I've done projects with the village before, actually very close to here, I can get started on doing the preliminary design prior to our surveyors actually even getting out there. I can determine all the flows and everything before they're able to go out and start the survey. So I won't be waiting on anyone else. The drainage design can start right away.
Okay. And then also with the surveying going on, the boots on the ground survey going on, do you see any potential problem or issue if there's residents enjoying the park while you're out there surveying?
Our surveyors frequently work in residents' backyards. They're very personable. They know how to deal with any questions that come up, and they won't be interfering with anyone who's out there while they're working.
And lastly, your proposal price that you gave us, is that a firm price or is that not to exceed price?
That is, I discussed that before with you, it's not to exceed price. I'll give you an example. I just finished your bike path project, that community trail from Martingale to 159th Street. Our fee was $38,000. everything went really smooth. We got all the approvals from IDOT, and there was no glitches. And we were able to finish the project between $25,000 and $26,000. So I'm going to leave a lot of money on the table, and you will find very few engineers that will do that. So we're gonna see how this project goes. That is our upper limit, and if we can do within that, and if we leave some, we leave some, because I want to work for the village on a long time basis. I want to build a relationship with the village, and I have been working with the village and the township for a long time. I want to do many projects for you. I consider myself as an extension of your staff, and so I don't want to make money on one project. I want to keep working for you, and we'll do the best with that.
And in the past, we have not come back for any addendums on our projects.
Okay, thank you.
Question, Mayor. You said you were aiming for November 25th target date. Do you think, will you be able to obtain funding in that frame, or is that going to be way too quick? I mean, are we giving up funding for a couple of weeks, pushing up a schedule? I just wanted to know what your feeling was.
Just like Logan mentioned before, this is the preliminary study, when we design this project, it will be shovel ready. For this stage, you will not be able to get funding. But once the project is shovel ready, we can approach IEPA, and we go with the shovel ready project. It doesn't take that long. They can expedite the process. For your future construction, you can get the funding, but not for this design, because there are a lot of time constraints.
Yeah, it's just been our experience that if you're ready to build, your odds of getting funding are much greater than they would be if you were still in the planning stages. And then again, since this is specifically listed in the watershed-based plan, that greatly increases your chances of getting funding.
Thank you.
I just want to comment that I appreciate your knowledge and your expertise in what you've shown us today, and it really shows that you put a lot of hard work and effort into it, and obviously doing projects in the village for us before. It's evident you know this community extremely well.
Thank you.
I just have maybe two quick ones. Similar things that I asked the previous firm. The price structure includes the resident survey, 3 meetings with staff, and the final presentation to the board, correct?
Yeah.
If there's a need for additional meetings with staff, is there an additional charge for that?
Like I said, this is my upper limit, and if I can accommodate with it, that I definitely will. I'm pretty sure we can accommodate that, you know, and as we are developing this detention basin, we will have a lot of interaction with your staff, and if you need an additional meeting or so, I don't see a problem.
Okay. Another similar question I asked the previous firm. With them, it was on the topo survey. With you, there's a pretty significant price difference on when we total up the prelim draft and the final report. Is there a reason why that is significantly higher?
But see, it depends on what kind of comments we're gonna get. We are going to develop about 4 or 5 alternatives. We'll be working with your staff, and we're soliciting input from you, and then come up with a design. So it takes a lot of time, you know, and so we accounted for all that. And one of the reasons is I hate addendums. In my previous position I used to work for IDOT, and I know the local agencies, the municipalities and all don't like addendums, and I personally don't like that too. So I accounted for all that to make sure that project gets done.
Okay. And as Akram was saying, when I do designs like this, we don't just take one idea and stick to it. We're going to look at, if we have a pond of this size, will the downstream storm sewer be able to handle it? If we make the pond a little bit bigger, is that going to fix everything? If we're limited on the pond footprint, would we potentially have to increase the storm sewer size and ditches downstream? We're not just going to be focused on that northeast corner. We're actually going to look at that corner all the way down to the stream. So we're going to play around with a lot of different things and find out what the best option is for you.
Thank you.
I know you do great work for the village. I know you've helped us out immensely many times. You've come back and anything that we needed addressed, you came back, so we do appreciate that very much. So I thank you for all the information that you've given us tonight. The board will discuss it, and we have it on for next meeting to...
Yes, what will happen now is you will individually poll the board members and see which firm you favor, and then that firm and the village attorney and I will draft up a professional services agreement that you'll be acting on at your next meeting.
Okay. So
that will keep us within the very tight time frame that you all are seeking. So.
Okay. Is that good with everybody?
Yes.
I appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks again for the opportunity.
Okay. With that being said, is there any old business?
Mayor, you have 2 items.
For new business. Yeah. All right. So we do have a couple under new business. So Mike, yes, Trustee Costa, you have mentioned that.
Okay, first I'd like to talk about our community fest. You know, we have it every June. Every June we've had it 5 years. I would like to get the board's consensus on a possible situation that may come up in the next week or two. And I'd like to know if the board would consider having the fest on a Woodbine Park property.
That would be the entire fest.
The entire fest. This is due to many reasons. Right now, everything's not cut in stone, but it has to do with parking and availability and everything else. But rather than the committee to look into one avenue or make some decisions not knowing, I just like a consensus of the board if you'd be willing to consider, or if you would consider having the fest on our property.
I would be open to considering it, based on our due diligence.
Okay.
I'd consider it as well.
I think that's the purpose of it.
Yes and no. I went out there with the Rob from the carnival to see if it could work for him to be on a parking lot of the property, and there's not enough room. He plans on making it bigger and better every year, so what he would like to do is work on one of the holes, and we'll find out which one's going to accommodate it once the engineers do their due diligence. It would free up parking to where we had the festival before. All that parking would be available. The parking next door at the farm would be available. The parking west on Cream and 151st would be open. Our parking would be open. So we wouldn't have to be chasing people around. We still would be able to have Bankston's to use their property, or you could do busing from 92. So we have it. This just helps out immensely with pretty much everything. It gives us everything on the grounds. It gives the residents an opportunity to be able to use the property and be able to have a very large carnival. And we still could have the fireworks on it too at the same time. So
I'm sorry, Mayor.
Go ahead, Joe. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're going to do as a committee, Trustee Caprio and I are co-chair for the village, along with Township Clerk Lindsay Sowa, also co-chair on the committee. So we're calling a meeting next Wednesday. We have a lot of details to go over and see what, just trying to finalize everything, see which way we may have to go. And in a future meeting, we'll report back to the board on a recommendation from committee on what we feel is the best way to go for the future fest.
And second?
Secondly, Woodbine Park. We bought the property a while ago. The decision was made or not made by the previous owner or by anybody to keep it as a golf course, so now it's going to be a park. I'd like to know how soon we can open up to the residents. I mean, we've got roughly 80 acres of beautiful grass out there. We're paying thousands of dollars to cut it. Why can't we open this up? We can put some porta potties out there, some picnic benches, some garbage cans, make sure it's secure or safe, some signage. I don't see any reason why we can't open this park up for residents to go out there and enjoy it.
We put a time limit on it too.
I think we should get moving forward on this right away. I don't know why my fault too, why we're waiting this long to bring this up and get something going.
A lot of it though too also had to do with the engineering because we didn't know what could and not be done. So now we got our answers from the engineers that we can use it. So I agree with Trustee Costa. I think we should open this up. It's going to be a simple open. We'll work on trail, picnicking, stuff like that. Other than that, it's month to month is how we're going to have to work it on.
Right, so I'll just tell you, I'm just always trying to think ahead on stuff. So we've been actually, as we've been out on the property, we've actually been creating lists of things that we need to happen in case the board decided to open up the property. And there's ultimate for passive recreation. There's actually a list of about 22 things. 10 things would need to happen in order for you to literally open it. And then there's like an additional 12 things that would be nice. I'll give you an example of a nice thing. A nice thing is we happen to have bike racks in storage. Installing a bike rack or two at the front of the property, that would be a nice thing. A requirement would be porta-johns that Trustee Costa mentioned, one handicap accessible, one not, with water availability. Some security fencing that we would have to do to make sure and secure the property so no motor vehicles could get on the property. Signage, rural signage, which the committee's already been working on. So there's a list of basically 12 things that we would have to do before you could probably tell people to go on, and then an additional list of other things. I think all of it could be achieved at a reasonable price. We didn't budget for any of this stuff, but I could put together a rough budget for the board to look at, and I'm sure you could find room in the Parks and Recreation budget to buy the necessary picnic tables and things of that nature. So staff would be very excited and happy to get rolling on this stuff. I can't give you a specific date. Hope you're not looking for a specific date tonight, but we could get rolling on it, provide you with a list of the things that we think need to be done, work with Chairperson Leitsky on this stuff, and start working on it. We'd be happy to.
I just have a quick, I brought this up on numerous occasions individually and just throughout the community from a legal perspective, and I'm not a lawyer. That's the only thing that concerns me. There's buildings out there, there's things out there. I've read in prior to joining the board, parks that have been vandalized along 159th with total visibility to 159th. I would just, signage is a definite. I don't want to say that I don't want to park there. I'd love to have people enjoying it. I just want to make sure we cross dot every I, cross every T, and make sure that we understand what we're getting ourselves into. It's great that everyone wants to go out there and enjoy themselves and enjoy the freedom of being out there. From an ADA perspective, are we required to make these paths connect? I don't know.
We would anyhow.
Okay. That's just my
out there. It just is.
So the paths that we would, first of all, I would just say, what I'd like to do very quickly is invite a Park District Executive Director that I know to come down and just walk them through the property and have them just throw off things that maybe we haven't thought about. And that will be a pretty simple thing to do. And that's for little things that maybe, would cause problems in terms of potential harmful things that we would identify and know. And this particular executive director would be happy to do it, and I'd be happy to take their advice. The path is not actually ADA accessible. It's a natural path of stone. It's not made of asphalt. Portions behind the building, small portion is asphalt, but most of it is stone.
Right.
That we need to drop stone, we need to drag on it to fill in the holes. There's a lot of ruts and holes that we'll need to do. We could potentially utilize our current landscaper that's mowing the property, who's already looked at that and has expressed some interest in helping us on things like that. I think the number one thing that we could do very quickly is just provide you with a list of things that we think need to happen, some rough estimates on cost. That we would need the board to be flexible on the cost side of things so that we have some flexibility there so that we're not having to come back and getting approval every time we buy a picnic table or something like that if you want to move more quickly. So that we could do, and we'd be happy to do it. We've been thinking about it, obviously. I have in my office somewhere, but when Trustee Costa mentioned it, I didn't have time to go look, so I tried to recreate a list of all the things that staff has already talked about that need to occur, and that's why I came up with the 22 things, 10 of which would absolutely have to occur before you want to open it. Number one being the trail, the walking trail, which actually is quite nice. It's not lengthy, but it's nice. There's a lot of divots in it. It had, and so we have to drop some stone and drag it and fill in the holes. And maybe there's a couple sections where we'd like to connect the existing trail to a couple offshoot trails. We get some costs on that and see. I know one of the hard parts is that the trail actually follows along the eastern part of the property and goes back to where the stormwater detention improvements will probably occur. So we'll not want to put a lot of money into things that may get torn up, but we can look at that and figure out some answers to those kinds of things. So, and there's just huge swaths of land that would be great to kick a ball around in. Throw footballs and all sorts of stuff. It's a real amenity. We've already done the number one, probably most expensive thing, which is remove all the dead trees, fill in all those holes, all the stumps have been removed. We do need to do some other things. I don't know what you call them, but the signposts that used to be at the greens that had the number, a lot of those are in cement, and a lot of those would have to be removed. Things like that we'd have to get going on. There's, I think, close to 20 water irrigation panels that are not secured. We would have to get someone out to key all those and secure them so that no children would get in there and be messing with the wires and stuff like that. So there are things that would and that's in the group of 12 things that would have to occur first. There's things that will take some time, but if you want us to get going on it, I'd love to get started on it tomorrow and just plow ahead.
Consensus.
Sorry, nope, that's okay. I just wanted to add, this was all discussed at the Park and Recs meeting. I was waiting to hear from the engineer to answer most of these questions. There was 5 questions that were actually brought up at the last meeting, and number 1 that was asked by everybody is when can people go on the grounds? And since the engineers had both stated that there would be no problem, that was the number 1 concern that I had. The other things were the porta potties, the garbage cans, the picnic tables, and whatnot. I did, on my own, sort of come up with a rough draft of things that we would need and what some people had mentioned that they would like just for passive, just for passive use. I have been contacted by other people saying, can we do practices, can we do this and whatnot? And that was something I also wanted to talk to you guys about. But I think we should, as of right now, we should stick with passive use at the moment.
No pun intended, I do not want to open the floodgates.
I agree.
Right.
I agree.
So, well, we'd be happy to start on some stuff tomorrow. And
If you could send your list to each one of the trustees and myself, and this way we look at them, because all of us have been on the property multiple times too, so this way at least if there's things that we need to do, we can get that done. But yes, the consensus here is, let's get it going.
Sorry.
The final thing I would just say about parks, parks unfortunately get vandalized. I've never worked in a town where parks can get vandalized. We're very fortunate here that the vandalism that occurs is pretty minimal. There may be some vandalism done, but it's the nature of a public park that brings people to it. Some stuff will happen. We'll just try, I think one of the blessings we have is that there aren't a lot of, it's mostly natural amenities. So if there's damage that's done to natural amenities, they're often easier to fix than structurally. One of the things we will have to look at is there are a couple, I don't know what they called them in the golf world, but I would call them like miniature shelters on the northwest corner and the east and the west corner, northeast and northwest. One of them is not been probably maintained too well these past couple of years, and so we might look at that and see whether or not that's something that would stay up and we need to fix, or something that we want to bring down. So there's just stuff like that we look at, but we'll get going on it tomorrow.
Well, and not to harp on this, but the vandalism thing, the only reason I'm concerned about that, it's a huge park.
Right.
And there's no way we're going to have park police out there looking at every acre or every ounce of it. And then
we want the residents to be comfortable.
Yeah, and the only other thing is that you brought this up, and I just want to add about buying park benches and things like that. With this park person that you may go out to the property with, figuring out where we would put certain items, I guess, and maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse, but come up to a not to exceed, so that way you're not getting approval for a bench, approval for a sign, approval for, I mean, it's much easier to grant.
I'd like to add to that also. We're looking at, by the time we get moving on this, which hopefully we can make significant progress on this list by the 26th, so that we can have some discussion and make some decisions. You know, when we're talking about park benches and things like that, the kids are already back in school on the 26th, so we can say, hey, we'll put a park bench out there, or this or that, just so that we can get use of the property in 2015 and then have a longer-term goal for 2016. But to put, you know, what I'm hopeful that we could do is get a lot done between now and the 26th so that we can get people out there within the next 3 weeks after that, or whatever the case may be, so that we can use this property in 2015. And if that means getting 1 picnic table instead of 3, then we do that, and then we look for something more long-term in
Very good.
2016.
But probably the most important thing would be just within reason that there be some flexibility in terms of purchasing things, because if I have to come back and ask for permission about this, that, or whatever on everything, then that will obviously slow it up. So, and I know the mayor will talk to you about these things, and then I can talk to the mayor about it. So we'd be happy to get started. What they typically tell you is, you know, you can always expand, start small. So that's kind of what you're saying.
Right.
And you put things closer to the building, picnic tables and stuff like that.
More
where
visible.
You're actually more visible.
Sure.
And you definitely don't put a picnic table in the northwest or the northeast corner where the houses are, because then younger kids will gravitate to those places, sitting on the picnic tables, you know, making noise, stuff like that. So you try to keep everything up in the front.
Well, my point
and
exactly
then
was...
later, if you want to expand it, you expand.
My point exactly was giving the leeway to say, we can spend X amount of dollars and we can get this thing moving instead of begging for forgiveness every time.
We'll start working on it tomorrow.
All right, one other thing for the residents. I would like it to where we send a letter to around Woodbine, Shuttlebrook, Woodbine West. They live around there, so they know some of the issues that could be up there. Let's get their input on it, so this way at least what they know, we know.
Yep.
I just want to reiterate, it's not as of open as of now.
No.
Yeah, it's still, okay. Reiterating that.
Came as we put together a rough budget for these items, for the 10 or 12 items, and then the additional 10 or 12. Can we also put together a rough timeline for what those would take for the next meeting?
Okay,
Just
next
rough,
meeting we
same
can
as the
have
budget,
some of
just
that done.
just a rough timeline.
Right. Well, it might be that on issues, because you'd be surprised, these the picnic tables that we have to put in, they have to be handicap accessible. They do have a timeline, like you could order one today and not have it for weeks, but you know what we can do? We can borrow some tables from the other parks who have multiple tables. So there's stuff like that that we can do. You know, you can go to Stonebridge at any point and there's two empty tables all the time, and there's people sitting at the other tables. So there's stuff like that that we can do.
We could also put
And
it
I
out
think
there
if
to
we're able-
sponsor a table, sponsor a brick.
So I think, you know, like we've done with the bench programs over the years, I think if we're able to, one thing in particular, like with the trail situation, if I had to go out, like today, if I had to develop an RFP and go out and do all that stuff to fix the trails, that would not meet any timeline that you'd want to see. But if we can use the current landscaper that we have, who's done great work on the site, R&R, and we get a quote from them, and if you think it's reasonable, then that might be something that we could utilize their services, and they're very familiar with the property. They've been mowing it for months, obviously, and they do this in other places. So that's the kind of stuff I'll be looking at, with the idea to get something done at a reasonable price, but as quickly as possible.
Keep in mind, I mean, you know, I hope the residents understand that to make it ADA compliant, we're not looking, you know, we are going to do that. We need that for our residents and friends that are physically challenged. But right now, I think that, and I hope you will, Councilman, help me for this, would we be okay to open it with limited ADA accessibility to the park of what it is now? Would we be okay to do that right now?
Something I have to do okay.
Okay.
So-
Because there is asphalt up in front.
Right. There's a
And
lot of places
it is
that are
accessible.
That's
And I think
probably where
we're-
the picnic tables will be. So they'll be able to get to those. The bathrooms will be completely accessible. There are many parks. You can go right down the street. There are many parks and conservation areas that do not have asphalt paths. Okay, there are stone pathways everywhere, and almost probably every park district in the southwest suburbs. So that's not, I'm sorry?
The Forest Preserve.
Forest Preserve District, yeah. So I think the portions that need to be accessible, the entrances, the bathrooms, the picnic tables, all that kind of stuff, I think will be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else? Okay, I need a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, meeting is adjourned.